Wait, that's happened? Napoleon got attacked by bunnies? History is packed with unbelievable true stories, but few are as absurd as the day one of the greatest military commanders in history found himself under siege, not from an army, but from an army of bunnies. Yes, Napoleon Bonaparte, the man who marched across Europe and bent kingdoms to his will, was once forced into a humiliating retreat by a horde of rabbits. The year was 1807. Napoleon had just signed the Treaty of Tilsit, which ended a costly war between France and Russia. Victorious and in high spirits, he decided to celebrate with a grand hunt, a popular pastime among the aristocracy and a way to display his authority in peacetime as much as on the battlefield. Hunting parties were often staged with dozens or even hundreds of animals released into the countryside for nobles to pursue. Napoleon, never one to do things halfway, instructed his chief of staff, Alexandre Berthier, to organize the event in style. Berthier set to work, sparing no expense. He arranged for a massive supply of rabbits. Accounts vary, but estimates suggest anywhere from several hundred to over 3,000. The animals were gathered in cages and transported to the fields where the hunt would take place. Napoleon, along with his generals and members of his court, assembled for the day of sport, expecting a leisurely afternoon of chasing and shooting. But what happened next was not the elegant hunt Napoleon had envisioned. When the rabbits were released, they didn't scatter in fear as wild hares normally would. Instead, they turned as one and began bounding straight toward the hunters. At first, Napoleon and his men laughed at the sight. A few rabbits charging toward the emperor might have seemed amusing, even charming. But soon it became clear this was no ordinary group of animals. The entire mass of bunnies surged forward, a furry tidal wave surrounding the hunting party. Napoleon, who had stood unfazed before cannons and musket fire, now found himself utterly bewildered. Rabbits clambered up his boots, tugged at his coat, and hopped into his carriage. His generals tried to shoo them away with riding crops and muskets, but there were too many. The animals were relentless, pressing forward as though Napoleon himself were their prize. The scene quickly devolved into chaos. The Emperor of France, conqueror of Europe, was forced to retreat in his carriage, whipping the horses into a gallop to escape the onslaught of hungry rabbits. Behind him, his generals laughed and stumbled, swatting away persistent paws and twitching noses. The mighty emperor's grand hunt had transformed into a farce, one he could never have predicted. The explanation for this bizarre assault was simple and entirely human. Berthier, in his eagerness to please the emperor, had not acquired wild hares for the hunt. Instead, he had bought domesticated farm rabbits, animals raised by humans and accustomed to being fed by hand. When their cages were opened, the bunnies didn't see Napoleon as a threat. They saw him as a walking, talking source of food. Instead of fleeing, they charged, hoping for a meal. For a man so concerned with reputation and image, it was a disaster Napoleon would rather forget. His campaigns were legendary, his battles studied by generations of officers. But the bunny incident was whispered with laughter behind closed doors. Even the newspapers of the time hinted at the farcical event. Though details remained vague, no one dared mock the emperor too openly while he still held power. Yet history, with its long memory, preserved the tale. Today, the Great Rabbit Incident of 1807 stands as one of the most ridiculous episodes in Napoleon's career. It is a reminder that even the greatest figures of history are not immune to absurdity, that the man who bested kings and emperors could still be bested by a horde of hungry rabbits. If you enjoyed this strange piece of history, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe for more.